It's story time. When this particular campaign started, I asked my players what kind of campaign they would like, and most all of them said that they wanted to play a heist style campaign. So after a little bit of work, I had an idea of what to do and where the plot would probably go. In session 1, the party gets hired by a mysterious woman who has them steal a relic from a nearby safe and have them replace it with a fake. They run into some problems, but manage to do the job, and they pin the blame on some kobolds and lizard folk who were also trying to steal the relic. Then comes session 2. One of the players, completely in character, starts questioning if they should keep working for this mysterious woman. He then spends time speaking with each character and convincing them that they should turn their employer in. Before the end of the session, they've reported this mysterious woman to the authorities and actually defended the next target instead of stealing from it. In other words, it was session 2, and my campaign was completely derailed from what it was originally supposed to be. For some of you, you may have had a similar experience to this. And some of you may even think that this would essentially spell the end for my campaign, since this went completely against my plans, and I would have to redo pretty much everything. But this campaign has continued on for nearly 4 years after this. We're having a great time, and we're only now getting close to the real end of the campaign. Now, here's a couple of things that have helped me keep going and deal with the many curveballs that my players have sent me through that time. Number 1, be honest with your players. Now, don't get me wrong, the DM screen is there for a reason, and I'm not saying that you should tell your players everything that you were thinking, or tell your players all the plot details. There should still be some magic behind the scenes, but what I am saying is don't be afraid to be honest when you need to. I often find myself asking my players at the end of a session, okay, now, what are you guys actually planning on doing next session? This not only gives me the ability to plan for what they exactly want to do, but it gives them the chance to have a group conversation on what they want to do. If the players suddenly go into a direction that you had no idea they were going to go, I found that being honest with the players and just saying, hey guys, I did not prepare for you to do this. You can do this, but give me a bit to work something out, is way better than either railroading them into the way that I wanted them to go, or acting like I totally had something prepared and just make stuff up in the moment. Making stuff up in the moment might work out for you if you're really good at it, but I know for me, it helps to have some time to think. This guideline goes first because it's so important. D&D and other tabletop RPGs are cooperative games, and to do that well, you need to communicate. And to communicate well, you need to be honest. It is okay for you to not be the all knowing DM who is able to predict all the things, because, let's be honest, there's more of them than there are of you. The odds that they'll do something that you don't expect are pretty high. So just be honest. If they throw you a curveball and you need 10 minutes to make something, just let them know. They'll probably be happy that they stumped the DM, and they should be perfectly fine with you making more content for them instead of forcing them to go in a certain way because that's what you wrote. Number 2, only plan one session in advance. When it comes to the entire plot of the game, it's good to have a general idea of how it'll go. I like to have an idea of how it'll start, a really cool thing or two in the middle, and how I want it to end. But that's about as fleshed out as it gets. When it comes to the actual detailed planning of the story, I go one session at a time. There's no need to build an entire city that the players may just never go to, or to plot out a whole dungeon when the players may not even bother with it because there's something else that seems more important to them. I do most of my building the session before. when I know that's what the players are planning on doing. Of course, sometimes I still have to throw things out, but it's only a little bit of work that goes to waste, and not weeks and weeks of careful planning that gets thrown out the window. Not only does this save me time and effort, but it also makes it so I'm not as tempted to railroad the players into doing what I thought that they were going to do, and planned for them to do. If they decide to skip town instead of dealing with a mercenary threat head on like I thought they were going to do, that's fine. Unexpected, but fine. Now, instead of building that mercenary base, I get to make some on the road encounters and build the small town that they're going to. Players will do unexpected things, but as long as you don't build too far in advance, that's not a super big deal. And even those things that you do build that do not get used, you might be able to use later. Who's to say that the layout of that mercenary base isn't the same as the layout of the goblin base on the road? The players never saw the mercenary base, so the only one who knows that it was supposed to be something else is you. Number 3. Make goals, not scripts. There will be many NPCs in your world, and for the powerful ones that have a big role in your story, it can be easy to think of their actions as part of a script instead of actions of an actual person. In reality, people will do what is best for them to achieve their goals, and I have found it much easier to not have my powerful NPCs on a script of what they should do now, but to have a goal for them. This goal may put them at odds with the players, or even put them at odds with other NPCs or factions, and that's great. I've had my players working with different NPCs that were certainly also bad guys, just because at that moment, the NPCs and the party wanted to accomplish the same thing for their separate goals. Now, a few points about these goals. Number 1. The goal should be very important to the NPC, something they're willing to fight for, probably something they're willing to die for, and something that a single diplomacy check won't just convince them to give it up. It comes from the core of their values. Number 2. Just one goal is fine, but it must be difficult to achieve, or at least take some time. The local lord of the realm may have maintaining the peace in this land as his goal. And while that may not seem all that difficult all the time, it's constant. There's always something coming up. Maybe his goal has him hiring the party. Maybe this goal has him dabbling in forbidden and dark magics, so that his land will finally be safe once and for all, no matter the cost. It can go either way, and maybe it's gonna go both ways, but that depends on number 3. Number 3. Who the NPC is determines how they try to accomplish their goal. A good and law-abiding NPC will try to go through good and law-abiding means to get the job done. An evil NPC that cares nothing about the local laws will do whatever it takes. Now, this doesn't mean that they're dumb, and that they will evilly break the law at every opportunity, even when doing things in a perfectly fine and law-abiding manner would get the job done just as well, and with less consequences. A brute will most likely try to accomplish the goal by the most direct means, while a clever mastermind may try different tactics if his current plan isn't working. The main thing here is to fit the way they work into what kind of person they are. And remember, what's going on in the world around them will affect what they do. That lord of the land may normally be perfectly law-abiding and would never mess with forbidden magics. But if it turned out that an army of dragons is descending upon his people, that dark and forbidden magic starts to look a lot more appealing, because he values the lives of his people more than the consequences of the magic. Now let's finish that story from the beginning. That mysterious woman from before was actually a powerful NPC in disguise using illusion and subtle alter self. His goal was to weaken the kingdoms of the land before the big bad comes in. The original plan was to subtly sabotage the artifact trade and get these powerful magical objects into the hands of the big bad instead. This plan involved the players being the ones that actually stole most of these artifacts. Then the idea was, after a long time of stealing things and dungeon delving to get the really spicy artifacts, the big bad would start showing up, and this NPC would give the players a typical bad guy ultimatum of join us or die. Then the players would probably choose secret option number 3, kill this NPC, and then have to deal with the actual big bad. But that didn't happen. That didn't even come close to actually happening. After the players decided to turn this NPC in, at session 2, now this guy has to figure out a different way to accomplish his goals. He starts by stealing some relics himself from the tribe of one of the players, and then sets about getting some goblins and gnolls to be more aggressive and, hopefully, more disruptive. But of course, the players hear about these, and they're hired to take them out. Now, this NPC could just jump in and try to take out the players himself, since they've been very disruptive to his plans. He's very powerful, and he could have wiped them out, or at least take out a couple of them before he's killed. But he's a bit too crafty for that kind of direct approach. Instead, he sees the strength of the party as an opportunity. He gets the gnolls and a druid mercenary to raid the town the players are staying in, and the mercenary takes one of the characters' girlfriends with him as a hostage. Naturally, the players all band together and sneak into the gnoll fortress to get her back. There's more going on though, as when they get there, not only is the girlfriend there, but there's also a bunch of other captured commoners, and they're all about to be sacrificed in a ritual that the party has seen before. So, they cast Fireball. They kill the remaining gnolls, they extra kill the druid mercenary because they had a beef with him, and they save the day. Just like this NPC predicted that they would. One of the players felt bad for the captured commoners, so the party agreed to split the loot that they got from the gnolls with the commoners. This was unexpected, but it just so happened to provide the perfect opportunity for our dear NPC. You see, he had disguised himself as one of these commoners and named himself Miguel. Miguel went to the party once they split the gold and thanked them for it, and he asked if he could stay with them. Considering the party gave him more gold than a commoner would make in an entire year, this seemed pretty believable, and they were overjoyed to have their first party NPC. Now again, Miguel could have just tried to kill them, especially now that he had gained their trust, but that wouldn't really help him with his goal. Instead, he decided to bide his time. He went along with the party. He even did some combat, although he just clumsily used a sword or a knife instead of his raw magical power. And I certainly loved it, whenever he was the target of an attack, and the players all held their breath worried that their dear NPC would get killed. Then, after quite a while, the perfect opportunity came. The party was hired on to be the bodyguard of their nation's ambassador. This made a lot of sense, because they had helped the king directly, and they even prevented an assassination attempt against him. So the king trusted them a lot. The ambassador was going to a rival nation, since it looked like that nation was preparing to go to war. Tensions were high. The fact that Miguel's mysterious woman disguise was actually the form of one of the rival nation's prominent leaders made things even more tense, since the party was very certain that she was the cause of most of their problems. They even had a conversation with this woman, which was tense, but they didn't accuse her outright of anything. They had a diplomatic job to do. Unfortunately for them, Miguel was now in the perfect position to achieve his goal. One subtle casting of Dominate Person, And while the party was getting a nice tour of the local shops, they suddenly realized that both Miguel and one of their party members was missing. A little magic later, and they were able to tell where their party member was. The party rushed back, alarming the guards all around them, busted into the room, only to find their own party member standing over the dead body of that important leader, still stabbing her over and over, compelled by mind control. Obviously, this looked really bad, and the party just had to escape. Miguel's cover was well and truly blown, but the party member he dominated also happened to be carrying the group's bag of holding, so he took most of their stuff as a parting gift before teleporting away, like the powerful spellcaster he actually was. The world was now rocked with that murder, and the war between the two nations was now inevitable. Miguel, whose goal was to weaken those kingdoms, got a major win. Now, I didn't tell you this story to pat myself on the back for winning against my players, or to say, aha, look how clever I am. On the contrary, this was not something I had planned. In fact, the story I had planned was not nearly as interesting as this one. And if I felt like I needed to push my original story on my players, because, well, that was what I had planned for, and that's what I had spent so much time working on, then I would have ended up with a much worse game. But I didn't spend so much time having everything worked out in detail. All I had worked out in detail was the next heist job. When the players threw the heist theme right out the window and became the regular good guys, I did have to toss some stuff, but it was pretty small. And knowing what the main NPC's goals were meant that even with a big shift like that, we were able to just adjust and continue on. This made it easy to improvise with Miguel. A look at his stats will show you that he has great mental scores. So clearly, he wasn't going to go the brute route and just attack the party out of spite. He went more subtle. And when more subtle didn't work, he decided to use the party, who was clearly a powerful force at this point, to achieve his goals. He wasn't sure he'd have an opportunity of assassination like he got. I didn't even know he was going to be able to do that. But he was a patient enough NPC that simply biding his time and manipulating the party was the best way to achieve his goals. And he was charming enough and ruthless enough to pull it off. To this day, the party has yet to get Miguel. He has dealt with them a couple more times, but he's been using a simulacrum to do it, since he knows the destructive power they're capable of. The players all hate this guy, and he's been a wonderful villain. But he only got this way because of the actions they did, and him reacting to those actions in a way that made sense for who he is. My game has gone on for a while now, and there's about 7 major factions in this game. That would be a pain for me to try to script out. It would take a long time for me to craft a campaign from that, and I would be really, really upset if my players just derailed everything and made all my work useless. But with this method, all I have to do is remember the goals of those factions, and how they'll try to achieve those goals. And then, I just have them react appropriately to the shenanigans of the players, if those shenanigans affect their goals. I hope this helps you with your games. Doing things this way has helped me a lot. It may be a little more work prepping for sessions than if I had scripted out the entire game, but it makes the game super flexible for my players and myself, and I don't have to worry so much about the players doing what players do best, throwing something unexpected my way.
Thank you for watching DM Dimitri. Have some great games.